Let's get straight to the point. What has unfolded over the last few hours with the release of these long-awaited government files is nothing short of outrageous. And I'm not talking about outrage in a dramatic, tabloid sense. I mean genuine public outrage over what appears to be a direct violation of the very transparency law that's supposed to protect the people. This isn't about left or right. It's not a partisan issue. It's about something much deeper: fairness, truth, and the integrity of our democracy. After months of bipartisan pressure, after countless hearings, after a new law was passed specifically to ensure transparency, the files were finally released. People expected openness. They expected clarity, but what they got instead was a black wall of censorship. Entire pages covered in ink, entire reports completely unreadable. In some cases, hundreds of pages where not a single word could be seen. So, naturally, people are asking, who are these redactions protecting? The transparency law was meant to reveal the truth about powerful individuals and institutions accused of serious crimes. The law was clear: release all unclassified documents within 30 days, not some, not partially redacted, but all of them. Yet the files that were released are so heavily edited that they're practically useless. It would almost have been more honest to admit nothing was being released at all. Now here's where things start to look suspicious. When you take a closer look, the redactions don't appear random. The more analysts dig, the clearer it becomes. There's a pattern. Certain groups, certain names, certain organizations appear to be consistently protected by these black bars, while others are exposed to public scrutiny. That's not transparency. That's selective disclosure. And it raises a powerful question about the fairness of the entire system. If the law demands openness, why do some people get special treatment while others are left hanging? Officials say the redactions are meant to protect victims. And of course, protecting victims is crucial, but the patterns don't match that explanation. It looks less like protection and more like preference, because justice doesn't come in colors or parties. It shouldn't matter whether someone has power, influence, or political ties. If they broke the law, they should be held accountable like anyone else. Equal justice must mean equal, no exceptions. Yet these documents show something very different, and this brings us to a larger point. When transparency laws are passed but not honored, trust in government collapses. People start asking whether the system is truly designed to serve them or to protect those already in power. They start to wonder if national security or privacy protection is being used as a convenient excuse to hide uncomfortable truths. Citizens aren't naive. They understand some information must stay confidential for valid reasons. But when entire reports are hidden, when whole pages are erased, when patterns of favoritism are visible to anyone paying attention, that's not security, that's concealment. Across the country, journalists, legal experts, and lawmakers are speaking out. Some say the government's explanation simply doesn't add up. They've reviewed the documents themselves and concluded that many of the redactions go far beyond what's necessary to protect privacy or ongoing investigations. On television, reporters have shown page after page of solid black ink, asking the obvious question, is this what transparency looks like? Even members of Congress from both parties have begun voicing concern. They've called the redactions excessive, unacceptable, and possibly even a violation of the law itself. The public deserves to see what was promised, not a censored version of the truth. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. This situation isn't just about these particular files. It's about the principle of justice and whether it applies equally to everyone. The American people deserve to know that the law doesn't bend for the rich or the powerful. It shouldn't matter if someone is a business tycoon, a political leader, or an average citizen. If crimes were committed, there must be consequences. Period. A justice system that shields the elite while punishing the powerless isn't a justice system at all. It's a system of privilege, dressed up as fairness. And that's exactly what this controversy is exposing, a structure that appears to protect influence over integrity. The survivors, the real victims, deserve more than half-truths. They deserve to see justice, not political theater. They deserve full disclosure, not redacted excuses. One survivor, who first came forward nearly 30 years ago, finally saw her original statement included in these documents. Her reaction was heartbreaking. She said she felt both relieved and devastated. Relieved that after decades of being ignored, the truth she told all along had finally been confirmed. But devastated because so many others were hurt in the years that followed, all because authorities failed to act back then. Think about that for a moment. There was enough evidence decades ago to stop this. Yet it took nearly 30 years for meaningful action to happen. How many people could have been spared trauma if the system had simply done its job? And that's where the outrage deepens, because the public isn't just angry about the crimes, they're angry about the cover-up. These redactions aren't only hiding facts, they're erasing accountability. When certain names vanish from documents, when connections are obscured, when the truth is edited for sensitivity, what we're really seeing is power protecting itself. This isn't about party loyalty or political sides. It's about principle. If we allow selective transparency to stand, we send a message that the truth only matters when it's convenient. Lawmakers who helped push this transparency law through Congress are now demanding answers. They say the law's language was unmistakably clear. All files must be released by the set deadline, fully and without selective editing. Yet what the public received does not meet that standard. So now, hearings are being planned, investigations are being launched, and the pressure for full disclosure is growing by the day. Attorneys representing survivors say they know what's missing. They've seen the evidence in earlier depositions. They know the names, the testimonies, the documents that should be there and aren't. If those files remain hidden, they say, it will prove deliberate suppression of truth, and they're not staying quiet. They're speaking publicly, holding press conferences, and vowing to take legal action if necessary to ensure compliance with the law. Public outrage isn't fading, it's intensifying. The survivors, their lawyers, and honest members of Congress are demanding full accountability, and sooner or later, through whistleblowers, through the courts, or through sheer public pressure, the truth will come out. Because history has shown time and again that the truth may be delayed, but it's never erased. You can bury it under redactions, you can try to hide it behind complex language, but truth has a way of finding the light, especially when brave people refuse to stay silent. So where do we stand now? This isn't just about one scandal, it's about the entire foundation of democratic trust. Transparency isn't optional, it's essential. If the government can decide which truth the public is ready to handle, then freedom of information becomes a performance, not a principle. Justice cannot exist without full disclosure, and transparency means nothing if it's filtered through power. For democracy to work, every citizen must have confidence that the truth will eventually see daylight, that no one, no matter how powerful, can hide behind redacted lines forever, because justice doesn't live in darkness, it lives in truth. And truth, no matter how long it takes, always comes out. The truth is, this story is far from over. Many leaders are saying it out loud now, that everyone responsible for the decisions behind these redactions must eventually answer for them. Because at the core of this issue lies something much bigger than a stack of documents or a technical mistake. It's about a fundamental principle that should unite all citizens, no matter their background or political views, full and equal accountability under the law. Everyone, and I mean everyone, who was involved in crimes against the vulnerable should be investigated, prosecuted, and punished to the fullest extent possible. It shouldn't matter what title they hold, what party they represent, or how much money or influence they have. If justice only applies to the powerless, it's not justice at all. It's privilege wrapped in legal language. And when the powerful walk free while the weak pay the price, that system stops serving the people and starts protecting itself. That's exactly what many Americans are beginning to see unfold right in front of them. These selective redactions, the inconsistencies in what's hidden versus what's revealed, they don't just create suspicion. They create the perception, and perhaps even the reality, that some individuals are being shielded while others are sacrificed. That perception is toxic. It erodes confidence in the justice system at its very foundation. The survivors, the people who endured real trauma, deserve far better than this. They deserve honesty. They deserve full truth, not half-truths filtered through black ink. They deserve to know that those who caused them harm will face real consequences, not legal protection disguised as privacy. One survivor who came forward decades ago recently saw her original complaint resurface in the new batch of documents. Her reaction was deeply emotional. She said she felt both relieved and devastated. Relieved because after years of being dismissed and called a liar, she finally has official proof that her story was true all along. Devastated because so many others were hurt after her warning went ignored. Think about that. An entire generation of victims could have been spared unspeakable trauma if the right people had acted when the evidence first came forward. This should outrage every person with a conscience. Authorities had leads, reports, and warnings decades ago. They had time, years and years to step in, but they didn't. And now, the country is left asking how many lives could have been saved if accountability had come sooner. What's even more troubling is how the story keeps shifting. In what officials called a review oversight, one file was released without the heavy editing applied to the rest. That one unredacted document revealed shocking details that were meant to stay hidden, the kind of information that changes everything about how this case is perceived. It wasn't just an error in paperwork, it was a glimpse behind the curtain, and it raised serious questions. If one mistake can expose something this serious, what else is still being kept from the public? When you put all these elements together, the partial release when the law demanded full disclosure, the excessive censorship that goes far beyond legitimate victim protection, the obvious imbalance between who's being exposed and who's being shielded, the pattern becomes clear. This doesn't look like simple bureaucratic confusion. It looks like coordination, a deliberate strategy to protect those with money, influence, and deep political connections. Here's the hard truth. You can delay the truth, but you can't bury it forever. No matter how many black bars are printed over the words, no matter how many press statements try to spin the story, truth has a way of leaking through the cracks. History shows us this time and again. Every major scandal that's ever been hidden eventually comes to light, not because those in power wanted it to, but because ordinary people demanded it. You can play political games, you can stage press conferences, you can throw around legal jargon, but eventually, brave whistleblowers, determined journalists, and relentless citizens force the truth into daylight. And that's what's beginning to happen here. Members of Congress, the serious ones who still care about justice over politics, are now calling for investigations into why the transparency law wasn't followed as written. They're demanding to know why the public got heavily censored material when the law called for a complete release. Some of the lawmakers who fought hardest for the law are speaking out again. They're saying, the rules were clear, the files had to be released by the deadline, not some, not the parts we choose, all of them, and they're not stopping there. Lawyers representing the victims say they've seen the original materials. They know exactly what was supposed to be included. They've participated in court depositions and reviewed internal records. They know the scope of what's missing, and there's certain key evidence is still being hidden. If those specific documents, especially the witness reports and interview records, never surface, then we'll have undeniable proof that someone, somewhere, made an illegal decision to suppress evidence. And those attorneys aren't keeping quiet. They're giving interviews, holding press conferences, and building public awareness. They're making sure this issue doesn't fade away. Public pressure is growing. People from across the political spectrum, survivors, journalists, lawyers, and even lawmakers, are united in one demand: full transparency. No more partial truths, no more selective justice, no more excuses. And whether it happens through internal leaks, court orders, or overwhelming political pressure, the truth will eventually come out. It always does. Because history has proven one thing: power can delay the truth, but it can never erase it. Not completely. You can try to bury it under black ink, lock it behind legal barriers, or drown it in bureaucracy. But truth has a habit of surviving. It resurfaces in documents, in testimony, in courage, often when you least expect it. And when it does, it changes everything. That's the reality we're facing now. This isn't just about a single case or one set of files. It's about what kind of country we want to live in, one that hides from truth or one that confronts it head-on. Justice doesn't serve the powerful, it serves the people. And until we hold everyone equally accountable, regardless of wealth, influence, or position, the system itself will remain on trial. The truth is coming. It's not a question of if, it's only a question of when. And when it does, it will remind us all that integrity isn't a political slogan. It's the foundation of freedom itself. If the government can decide which truths the public is ready to handle, then freedom of information becomes a performance, not a principle. Justice cannot exist without full disclosure. And transparency means nothing if it's filtered through power. For democracy to work, every citizen must have confidence that the truth will eventually see daylight, that no one, no matter how powerful, can hide behind redacted lines forever, because justice doesn't live in darkness. It lives in truth, and truth, no matter how long it takes, always comes out.